Can I ask if there are any apologies?
Thank you, Convener. Councillor Nicholl has submitted apologies. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thanks for that. The declaration of interest. Any member wish to declare an interest in any of the applications? Councillor Buchanan, Provost Buchanan.
Yes, Convener, I declare an interest in item 10. When the application for this site first came up, I declared an interest and have done all the way through, as the fact is that the landowners at that particular time were related to me through marriage. So I'll declare an interest and step out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Provost. We have 3 sets of minutes. The minutes of the meeting of the Planning Committee held on the 19th last month.
Agreed.
Can you agree the accuracy? Of the minutes of the meeting of the Planning Predetermination hearing held on the 26th of May. Do you agree?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah, and we have the minutes of the meeting of the Planning On-Sites Committee
Agreed.
of the 31st of March. Sorry, May.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll bring us on to item 5, but I understand that the Councillor Nimmo.
Yep, thanks, Convener. Just quickly, obviously, item 5 is a continuation, and I don't believe I was part of the original discussion in relation to this application. The same applies to item 6 as well. I'm just wondering if it would be appropriate for me to take part in each of these items, or whether I should just stand out.
I'll ask for some legal advice on that one, and also get some planning advice from the officers. Ian.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Councillor Nimmo, for picking up on that point. I think it very much sometimes depends on how the discussion develops on the item. So if you feel that you've got enough information at that point to take part in the decision making, you've read all the reports, you're familiar with the site, and you're happy with the information before you at the decision making meeting, then that could be appropriate. But it's ultimately under the code something you would want to think about, Councillor Nimmo, whether you feel that an absence from previous meetings might preclude you from feeling able to take part in the decision making.
I think it's probably best to play safe in that case, Convener. I won't take any part in item 5 or 6.
Convener, I, like Councillor Nimmo, feel the same way, so I won't participate in item 5 or 6.
Convener's on mute. You're on mute, Convener.
Right, third time lucky.
We can hear you now, Convener.
Yeah. Apologies for that. I did send the laptop into IT for a service today, so that nothing would go wrong today. But best laid plans are mice and men, as they say. The right, who are we? The Bernard.
Thank you, convener. Members, it's just a few comments in relation to item 5 on the agenda. Following publication of the agenda, the council has received a formal complaint in relation to this application. That complaint is to be investigated with regard to the council's complaints procedures. Given that situation, I would ask that members continue consideration of this application to allow that investigation to take place, and that no discussion of the application takes place today. Following completion of the investigation, the application would then be brought back to a future meeting of the planning committee. So, recommendation to members is that this application isn't considered today, and it's continued for consideration at a later date, with no discussion of the application at this time. Thank you, convener.
Okay, thanks very much, Bernard. The our members for mine to follow that advice.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, thanks very much. Item 6 is roads order at Main Street, Bonnybridge.
Bear with me a minute, convener.
Convener, just with your permission, I just wanted to clarify on the declarations of interest, because of what Councillor Hughes and Councillor Nimmo has said, and about that they hadn't been at previous ones and therefore didn't feel able to take part, which is entirely everybody's judgment to make. But I just wanted to clarify, because I'm not sure, agenda item 5 and 6 were continuations that we had, and it was that perhaps, I don't know whether members were at the site visits. Of course, I wasn't at the site visit, but that situation has come up many times in the past, and I've never felt unable to take part then if we've maybe been ourselves or whatever. But I just wanted to get legal to clarify if it was the case, not so much that members hadn't been in the discussion, as I think both members had, but they were saying they hadn't been at sites, because I just want to, obviously I would be in a similar position, but don't feel similarly in terms of the members' decision. So could legal clarify that, just for a point of information?
Mr. Henderson.
Thank you,
Any comments on
convener.
that?
Thank you, Councillor Murtagh. The code does have specific provisions, and indeed our standing orders do, in relation to debate on matters, and particularly where third-party interests are involved, you would expect that members don't miss substantial parts of a discussion on an item. That said, the view has always been taken over the years that there's a discretion to a member, and I think a lot of members in the committee will remember the position that was narrated frequently on site visits, where they weren't able to attend, but if they felt they were sufficiently familiar with the site, had read the report and felt sufficiently up to speed with the point up until the decision-making meeting, then they would take part in matters. So I think it's really a matter that's for each individual member to consider, which, as you'll often hear from the solicitors in legal services, is often the case under the Code of Conduct for councillors. Does that help to clarify matters, Councillor Murtagh?
It does. It was just because of that specific, that it seemed to be that members hadn't been to sites rather than being in, and this as well was an unaccompanied site visit where you didn't have a hearing, etc. So I just wanted to, because that's maybe not been the case in the past, but obviously an unaccompanied site visit, I'm not saying officers wouldn't give valuable information, but obviously members are able to go at other points, as you say. So I just wanted to clarify that, because obviously I did not attend the site visits for various reasons and I was unable to, but don't feel that I don't have the information to take part. So just wanted to clarify that. Thanks, convener. Apologies for the interruption.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Murtagh. The item 6. Bernard.
Thank you, convener. Item 6 is a roads traffic order, which I believe Russell Steedman will be speaking to.
Russell.
Thank you, convener. Yes, this is a traffic regulation order for a disabled space. The applicant lives in a house on the 803 Main Street in Bonnybridge, does not have access to off-street parking, and we would not normally place a disabled space on an A-class road where it would compromise the ability for two-way traffic. So that would be the case here if it was placed directly outside the applicant's house. So the closest place convenient for the applicant is actually in a lay-by about maybe 20-30 metres away from the applicant's house. And the lay-by is members viewed it at the site visit, and I think it's shown in the plan accompanying the report as well. There was an objection to the space, and those are summarised in the appendix report, which was the original report back in May last year. And really, it's for members to decide whether to make the order or otherwise. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions from the floor? Councillor McCluskey?
Yes, I was at the site meeting and Russell did tell us that normally we wouldn't put a disabled bay on an A-class road. Can you tell us, Russell, is that a Falkirk Council condition or is that a national guidance on that we don't do that?
It's really about, Councillor McCluskey, if you placed it on the A-class road outside the house, you would, the ability for two-way traffic, as I think members will have observed at the site visit, two-way traffic would be compromised at that point. So it's really for that reason. You know, if the road was wider, if the road could accommodate three lanes of traffic, we would have put it outside the house. But it's not. It's a two-lane road.
So it's relating to a two-lane road, and so there isn't a reason for not doing it. But well, you've explained the reason that you're saying it's a two-lane road. But if it had been wider, are you saying that national guidance that we could have then looked at putting a disabled space? Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. That's correct, Councillor.
Right, that's that clarified. It's just that obviously, convener, when we were on site, we did notice that for a disabled person, it is slightly further away than we would expect for a disabled person, and we've got to think of, you know, when we put a disabled person in, it's for the applicant, although anybody can use it. So, but it is for that one. So that was the reason. But I do understand fully now. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Blackwood?
Yeah, I mean, I think having had the site visit, I think that's obviously the nearest space for the person with a disability. Unfortunately, and so we don't park in the A03, unfortunately, the owner of the shop is parking his car probably directly across from the disabled individual's house, and they're causing a bit of a traffic disruption. But I would agree with Mr. Stephen, that's probably the nearest place to the applicant's home, and I would move grant the application. I'll second that, convener.
Is anyone otherwise minded? No. Thank you, colleagues, for that very clear message. Brings us to item 7. Permission of a temporary car park, Bridge Street in Grangemouth. David Patterson.
Thank you, convener. Good morning, everyone. The application site comprises areas of hard surface at Class 5 industrial land at Wood Street, Grangemouth, previously associated with Canville timber frames. The application proposes the formation of a temporary car park and a small storage area, direction of temporary fencing, and the siting of temporary lighting. The car park accommodates a maximum of 91 vehicles and is proposed to be used for a maximum of 2 years. The car park would serve as an overspill parking for the developer of the Class 5 renewable energy heat and power plant currently under construction at Callacairn, Ells Road, Grangemouth. Vehicular access is through the IBT building and timber site of Wood Street. There is an additional pedestrian access onto Wood Street. The application is submitted retrospectively. The application has been called in by Councillor Black. The Road Development Unit does not object to the proposal on the basis that the applicant is encouraged to ensure that vehicles using the proposed development use the preferred traffic route into Wood Street. For the avoidance of doubt, the preferred traffic route for vehicles associated with sites at Wood Street Industrial Area is via the B9132 Newland Road, Newhouse Road and Wood Street. The Road Development Unit consider that the proposed development would remove a parking risk associated with large projects such as the renewable energy combined heat and power plant from Earls Road and the surrounding area. The Environmental Protection Unit does not object to the proposal on the basis that the use of the proposed development is time limited to ensure that the amenity of adjacent residents is safeguarded. No air quality issues have been raised. The conditions and informative recommended in this report reflect the comments of the Road Development Unit and the Environmental Protection Unit. No other significant comments have been received from consultees. The Grangemouth Community Council has objected on grounds of excess vibration, privacy of adjacent residents, pedestrian access not satisfactory, light pollution. The proposal does not accord with the National Planning Framework. The Community Council notes that the application is submitted retrospectively and that other areas of the industrial site would have been better suited to the proposal. 15 communications have been received from the public. In addition to the comments of the Community Council, letters of public representation raise issues of concern related to issues of unacceptable carbon emissions, and the proposal is not acceptable in a residential area. The concerns raised by the Community Council and letters of public representation are addressed in the report and by the consultation responses of the Road Development Unit and the Environmental Protection Unit. The relevant policies of the Falkirk Local Development Plan 2 are JE06, Major Hazards, JE02, Core Business Areas, and PE01, Placemaking. These policies are assessed in the report. The proposal accords with the development plan. There is no relevant supplementary guidance. At this point, I would ask Mr. Whittle if he could scroll through the relevant drawings and photos.
Bernard.
And I'll try and put you through them as best I can.
So if you can bear with me, I'm just trying to share my my screen. Hopefully members can now see photographs.
The photographs show the area of thermal hard surface there that has been formed to accommodate the parked cars. The concrete hard surface you see there was there already. That's one of the temporary lights that has been put in, and you can see the residential development behind that 1.9 metre existing fence. That's just another shot showing that's the temporary fencing that would be around the storage area, and that's the temporary fencing that has been erected around the parking area.
Okay. Are you complete in terms of the presentation?
The drawings are pretty self-explanatory, shows the parking area and the access through IBT from Wood Street, and at the left-hand side of that drawing you see the pedestrian access that has been formed onto Wood Street.
Okay. Thank you for that. That's very useful.
Right. In terms of officer assessment, my apologies. The proposed development accords with the development plan. The proposal would serve to remove a parking risk from Earls Road and the surrounding area. The issues raised by the Community Council and members of the public are noted. However, there is no evidence or grounds in this case which would justify going against the advice of the Road Development Unit and the Environmental Protection Unit. It's recommended that the committee grant planning permission subject to the conditions and informative detail in the report. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Any comments or questions from the floor? Mr. McCluskey?
Thanks, convener. Obviously, I see some of I was reading the community council concerns, and some of them is obviously no material considerations, but it may be that, you know, in the future maybe we could do some training to some of the community councils, but you know, what's doing it for their own benefit. As I said, but the parking, obviously what happens here is the parking is to take parking away from other areas in the report. But if this was refused, I'm asking the roads here, could the people that are got road tax just park in the street anyway and surrounding streets? Would that know all that still happens? The same traffic would still come to that area, so that they could work on that site. Is that the case, or am I wrong with that?
I think it's a reasonable assumption.
Convener, if I can maybe come in here, if that's okay.
Yes.
Yes, Councillor McCluskey is correct. You know, there's nothing to stop these vehicles actually parking on Wood Street itself or the other in that whole residential area. This is trying to take construction workers' vehicles off road, which seems good to me.
Very much for that. That's a full explanation. That was all I wanted to clarify, convener.
No problem. Councillor Blackwood?
Yeah, two questions, convener. First of all, it's a respective application. So assume the car park is being used at the moment. Could I ask how long it's been in use?
Myself?
You're on mute, David.
You're on mute, David.
My apologies. Yes, the car park was formed around the tail end of last year and beginning of this year. Submitted retrospectively. I have been keeping, I have been monitoring the site. I've been to the site more than one occasion, and I've been monitoring it as I've been past the site. It's not been used to any significant degree yet. Anytime I've been there, there's been one or two vehicles parked, but it's not been used in the manner for which it's applied for in this application.
So where's the site? Where's the site traffic parking at the moment then?
I'm not aware of that whether the construction workers that are required are actually employed at the site yet or not. I'm not aware of that.
Okay. The second question is to do with this lighting. I mean, lighting is to face away from residential, when it's in recommendation 3, face away from residential property on no earlier than 7 AM in the morning and to be off by 6 at night. So why do you need lighting if we're in broad daylight? Why do you need lighting at all?
Well, I think that's okay in the summertime, but the site will operate till 6 in the evening, and in the winter time it'll be dark around 4. So it will need the lighting between getting dark and the site closing. And for a short spell in the morning, it may be dark. You'll see from the recommended condition that it's recommended the site does not open before 7 o'clock in the morning, Monday to Friday, 8 in the morning on a Saturday, 10 on a Sunday. There'll be times during the winter months where it will require lighting first thing.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Answers the question.
Thank you. Anyone else? No, I haven't looked at this particular application. I can see no grounds for refusing it. In fact, I think it would be a benefit to the community. It would take car parking out of these streets surrounding the site, and the has to be a good thing. So I formally move that the application be approved.
I'm happy to
Uh,
second, convener.
Okay, thanks for that. It's not clear. Anyone otherwise minded? No? Good. Thank you very much. Item 8 is back change of use, ground floor from the hotel class 7. From before. Row House in Gainsmouth. Who's doing this one?
It's myself, Councillor Alexander, convener. It's Julie Saddle here.
Hi, Julie.
Thank you. This application relates to the redevelopment of the Bow House Hotel in Grangemouth. Can we have a look at some plans just while I'm speaking, please, Bernard? Perhaps the block plan first and then the proposed elevations. The application includes the part change of use of the ground floor bar area to form 4 shops. The application includes external alterations to the building, which include new shop fronts and the formation of a parking area across the frontage of the existing building. The submitted plans show that the hotel would retain the first floor of the building for the hotel's use and a small part of the ground floor as a reception area. No objections are raised by consultees to the application, including the Roads Development Unit, Transport Planning Unit and Environmental Protection Unit. Grangemouth Community Council object to the application on the basis of road traffic issues and safety concerns. In the course of the application, 37 contributors submitted letters to the council. This comprised of 2 petitions objecting to the development, 11 objections and 24 letters of support. Can we have a look at the elevations if possible, please? The application is assessed as being in accordance with the development plan with specific relevance to policies in relation to placemaking, shop fronts, town centres and parking. It's considered that there are no material planning considerations to warrant refusal of the application, and it's recommended that the Planning Committee grant this planning application. I think we've also got a photograph we can look at that shows the frontage of the building as it is at the moment. Thank you, that's great.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Julie. Over to members. So, yeah.
Thanks, convener. Julie, if this wasn't supported and the owners wanted to open the hotel back up as it was, nothing could be done regarding planning and anything, could it? Should it just open back up?
Yep, obviously I think the building's it's not been used as a hotel. Certainly the bar area, I understand, has had some flooding and some damage, so it's not been in use. But if the building was renovated and brought back into use, certainly it's most likely that could happen without the need for planning permission. If they were going to be making any alterations to the external of the building to facilitate that opening back up, that might trigger the need for an application, but there would be no change of use that would require an application from us.
Thanks, Julie. Just a supplementary question, convener. There is mention regarding the parking and people's concern. Can I get some clarification or clarity on how that would be addressed, or if there is a problem?
I don't know if Russell wants to comment on the road's position in relation to this application.
Yes, can do. You know, it's end-on parking. It's not ideal. but it's common all over the place. Charlotte the Dash Court in Grangemouth has got that same situation, and there's no real issues associated there. Just as Julie says, the existing development as it stands has a parking demand, if you will, if it was reopened, right? So without providing any additional parking, so it's likely they would be parking in the bus lay-by or wherever, right? So this changes the demand, but it introduces basically off-street parking. So it's not ideal. I'm not saying it's ideal, but it's a common way of providing parking, and we consider it's acceptable in this location.
Thank you, Russell. Thank you, Julie. I'm quite happy to propose that we accept the recommendations of the planners, convener.
Anyone else? Mr. Bowes.
Thank you, convener. Thank James for his questions, because it was a similar question I was going to ask, and I'm quite happy to second Councillor Kerr.
Councillor McHugh.
Thanks, convener. I really just wanted to highlight and ask Russell that in the Bowhouse Hotel's heyday, you know, it was a very busy and active area with a lot of coming and going. I believe they used to have young discos and different things like that, so there would have been quite a volume of traffic. Can you say if he thinks there would be an increase in traffic with this new development than there would have been when it functioned before as a function hall, you know, with various parties and things going on?
I think, Councillor McHugh, the traffic would have been at a different time, probably. You know, it'd be later in the evening. And for this is shops, this will be, well, potentially, I don't know what the shops actually are. These shops will be throughout the day. So I'm not sure whether it'll be less traffic or more traffic. It'll just be about the same. I would suggest, but it'll just be at a different time.
Right. So you could actually say that this would be a better development then, because if it was late night traffic, that I imagine would be a more inconvenience to the residential area. So thanks for that, Russell.
Anyone else?
Yeah, convener.
Councillor Bartlett.
Just a quick question to Russell. With the need for traffic to reverse out of the site onto the busy road, so that's under Councillor Black's reason for calling in. She's parking spaces reversing out into a very busy road. Surely, is that the case?
That assumes that the vehicle drives in, nose forward, and doesn't do what it's supposed to do, which is reverse in. As I said, it's not ideal, but it's pretty common in Grangemouth already, round about Charlotte and Dash Court shopping area.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor McCluskey.
I was going to ask a similar question to obviously Councillor Blackwood, because it doesn't mention in the report, obviously it's down as a reason for calling in with Councillor Black, and in the responses for the public responses, it doesn't mention about the reversing. When we do get planning, it's very confusing to me as a member, because what Russell says here is true. Most people seem to drive into their parking space and reverse out, when technically they should be reversing in and driving out so there's better visibility, but the drive in. And yet when we go to planning applications, we normally ask for a turning area so that traffic can go in and ensure that they are turning and facing out. So there's sometimes confusion with this, that we ask for vehicles, or even in somebody's house, we ask for an area where it can turn and come out. So it's just that I don't understand why, because she has mentioned that and the reason for calling in, why the officers haven't responded to that. And I would like clarity on that situation. Why in some cases we're asking for a turning pit inside so they can come out, and in other ones we just accept the drive-in. I'm just a bit confused, and if officer could respond to that, please.
Yeah, it's a fair point. So,
Yeah, maybe I can. We would ask for that on an A or a B class road. This is not an A or B class. It's unclassified as far as I know. It's basically a housing estate road, a kind of main housing estate road, and it's very common for private driveways, you know, to go into these types of roads, and residents reverse out and in. As I say, it's not ideal, but I think it's acceptable.
You're on mute, John.
Very happy now that Russell has answered that fully and accept that. I just think that if that had been in the report, you know, it would have answered Councillor Black's concern, and you know, if it had been mentioned because she had raised it. But I fully accept that answer. Thank you very much.
anyone else? Bernard, you're indicating that you wanted to speak. Was that?
No, I had nothing to add, convener.
That's fine. Okay, well, what we have is a motion and a seconder to approve the application. Anyone otherwise minded? No. Yeah.
You know, before we go on, is Councillor Nimmo back in the meeting again? She left at the first item.
I wasn't aware of the fact he had left the meeting.
Right, okay, I see him there now.
What is the position?
Absent with his silence.
Alan's here.
He's here.
I'll need to make up for that then.
Just if you haven't heard them, then you know, I can understand why you're querying it, Councillor Blackwood.
Could be a bonus, convener. Could be a bonus.
Okay, item 9 is erection of a dwelling house and garage. Conciliate the accommodation of land east of the land street. Standing burn for Mr. and Mrs. Kevin. Apologies.
Thank you, convener. It's myself presenting this one, Kevin Brown. This is a detailed application for the erection of a single detached dwelling house and garage with ancillary accommodation above it at land to the east of Viewlands in Standburn. Members may recall that this the application P190322 FUL for the erection of a single dwelling house in this location was previously granted planning permission at Planning Committee on the 28th of February 2020. The current application proposes to utilise the same vehicular access location as that previous application, the access onto the C62 Candy Road Upper. In terms of consultation responses, the Roads Development Unit has reiterated their concerns from the previous application and advised that they do not favour development of this site. No other objections or concerns have been raised by consultees. In terms of representations, we have one letter of objection which was received from an adjoining neighbour during the course of the application. Details of the points raised are summarised in paragraph 6.1 of the report and addressed in paragraph 7B4 to 7B10 of the report. The application is assessed as being contrary to the countryside policies of the Falkirk Local Development Plan 2 and associated supplementary guidance. However, in this instance, it's considered that the material considerations in the form of the previous planning history, specifically the very recent extant planning permission P190322 FUL, are sufficient to outweigh the terms of the development plan in this instance. With this in mind, the officer recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions outlined in the report. Thank you, convener.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Any questions, points from the floor? Councillor McCluckie.
It's just to find out, you know, I see they've got I was quite happy with the condition we've got in number 5, that if the planning permission can't change, we need to come back to us for the garage and ancillary accommodation, can it be sold or occupied as a separate dwelling house? And I was just wondering for the legal team how much weight that has. You know, have we got is there teeth to that? You know what I mean? And it's no reason just to get a second accommodation. So I was just looking for a kind of clarification on that, convener.
I'll see if I can get you one. Planning.
Yes, it's an enforceable planning condition. It's applied quite commonly in certain instances. Bernard, I don't know if you've got the plans available in front of you. If you could put up the perhaps the floor plans for the proposed garage.
If you can just bear with me, I'll see if I can load them up.
The garage itself is proposed at ground floor level to have a single garage on one side with an office for the residents of the dwelling house on the other side, and in the first floor space it's proposed as ancillary accommodation for use by the residents. There's no indication on this application that they propose to use it for anything else other than that. So we felt it appropriate to apply the condition in this instance.
I'm very happy with that answer. I just thought it was maybe being considered as a kind of granny flat or for an elderly relation or something like that. So thank you very much.
Councillor Hughes, do you want to come in here?
Well, I was basically formally propose that the application be granted in line with the recommendations of the planners. That was all.
Right. Anyone else? Mr. Kerr?
I'll second the same, convener.
Yeah. Our motion. Mr. Murtagh?
Thanks, convener. I suppose it's more a point of like I know that I remember like the reasons we went to site etc. before, but I'm slightly confused if the previous officer recommendation was to refuse planning permission based on the assessments at that time in the contrast to development plan etc etc. And then members overturned that. That's fair enough for the reasons that we judged in material considerations. But that given that this is a larger development, I'm just slightly confused why, in terms of the way the process for officers, if we've changed the recommendation, you're saying based on the planning history, recent planning history of the site as a material consideration, is that based on the fact that members would be similarly minded to have the same judgment again? And I'm just slightly confused with the consistency of the recommendation if things haven't actually changed in terms of the planning terms before. And perhaps Bernard can, I don't know, I just would like some clarity on that in terms of, because that comes up time and time again when other sites will come forward. So I think it's really important to understand for members.
Councillor, I'm happy to come in there. The situation we're in here is that there's an extant planning permission. The committee have already granted planning permission for a house on this site. So regardless of whether members granted the permission, the application that's before you today, a house can be built on the site. Now, in planning terms, that's a very strong material consideration in the fact that members have already accepted the principle of development of a house on this site. And that's something in the balance of our assessment of the application. It's important that we take into account. So that's the reason why in this instance, although previously we recommended refusal of permission, this development being contrary to the development plan, and as is indicated in the report, that's still the position here. In this case, it's the previous planning permission, the extant permission that could be implemented, albeit what is now proposed as a larger site. Now, the principle of a house on that land has already been established, so that's a strong consideration.
Okay, that does clarify it somewhat. I still, so I understand because it's an extant planning permission. I think perhaps we're, thinking about potentially if, for example, that was withdrawn or it lapsed. And no, you know, that in that sense, we're kind of whether that's been weighted in the officers as well, you know, because these situations can occur. And I'm just confused as to why, if officer's recommendation was something before, that it would be, given it is a larger site, that it would change in that way. But if you're saying that the main material consideration is that it's because you believe the extent plan application would go ahead, etc., then I accept that. I just wanted that clarified. I think I'm fine with the proposal as it is, but just wanted that put on record. Thank you.
If I could just come back in on that point, you know, it is a case of judging each application on its individual merits. So yes, with the point you mentioned there, you could have a circumstance where a site has had permission in the past, that permission has then lapsed. That is also then a consideration as to whether it then merits a recommendation to grant the house on the site in those circumstances. That's not what we're looking at here. The previous permission is still extant. But, you know, I would agree if the permission had lapsed, that would be a different circumstance, and the assessment in that situation could have been different.
Okay. No, that's helpful, because I think we're told in our training very much that we have to assess each planning application on its merits at the time, and therefore, yes, it's a material consideration. There's an extant planning permission, but I was getting slightly confused as to why that would be the case. But you've explained it, so I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Okay, we've got a mover and a seconder. Anyone otherwise minded? No. We approve the application. Thanks, colleagues. The item 10.
Convener,
Yes.
Convener, could I get put in the lobby now? I've declared an interest in this.
That's right. That's right. The
Provost, I think you can stay on the meeting as long as you don't contribute, because it is a live streamed public meeting. I can move you to the lobby if you prefer, but as it's a public meeting being live streamed, you can stay in the meeting, but just don't contribute.
I'll just
If
check
you could
that.
put
Yeah.
if you could put your video off and put yourself on mute.
Yep.
That's great. Thank you, Provost.
The item 10. We have a deputation, I believe, from McLean, agent. The members, it's only members that can approve the acceptance of a delegation. Are you happy to hear the agent? This particular case.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Can I ask if there's any deputation coming from the applicant? Or is the agent for the applicant, right? Sorry. No one from the objectors. Okay. Mr. McLean.
Good morning. Thank you for agreeing to the deputation and the opportunity to speak to you this morning. I'm Phil McLean from Geddes Consulting, the planning consultant, acting for Avant Homes, the applicant. Also on the call this morning is Andrew Riddle from Avant Homes, if any relevant questions come up. The committee is probably aware that detailed planning approval was granted for...
I can just stop you just now.
Yes.
Because I have the responsibility to outline what the procedures are. For a deputation, you have 10 minutes approximately, and after which the members may have some questions for you, and after which you will withdraw from the participation within the meeting, and members will discuss it at that point.
Yep.
Is that understood?
That's fine. That's understood. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much. Sorry to disturb you.
No problem at all. Okay, so yeah, just to confirm, the committee is probably aware of the background with the detailed planning approval on this site, which was granted for 93 homes back in December 2020. And Avant is very much committed to the delivery of that development, high quality development on this site, with a comprehensive mix of medium-sized family homes, and that range will complement the existing offering in Larbert by other builders. Avant is also committed to providing 25% affordable housing, which is in line with the Council's policy, and this application that is before you today accords with the Council's policy, and we welcome Officer's recommendation for approval. We are aware that this site has attracted a degree of public interest, but we do note that there's no public objection to this particular application. Just wanted to give you some background on this application, really. Discussions with the Council's housing officers regarding the affordable housing for this proposal have been ongoing for some time, since early 2020, at the very start of the detailed planning application process, and that followed on from Avant purchasing the site in December 2019. And the original intention was for a mix of half social rented homes and half low cost home ownership on the site to make up the 25% affordable housing provision. The proposed discount on the sales values for the low cost for sale properties was going to be over 10% of market value, which was the level that would be financially viable and deliverable for Avant Homes. And I'd just like to clarify, there's a figure of £220,000 mentioned in the committee report. That's the value before applying the 10% discount. Unfortunately, following consultation with the district valuer, the council's housing officers advised us that even with that discount, these homes wouldn't formally qualify as affordable homes in terms of the council's policy. And the district valuer had considered that even lower sales values would be necessary in Larbert, which essentially would make these homes financially unviable for Avant to deliver. And these discussions with housing officers were taking place back in March and April 2020, which you're obviously aware was the early part of the current COVID-19 pandemic. And that is the context for this, which was creating significant challenges for the house building industry, threatening the financial viability of the proposal due to increased costs of materials, contractors, borrowing, along with delays in planning construction processes. So that's the context of these financial challenges, which had taken place just a short time after Avant had purchased the site. And that meant it was impossible to offer a further discount on the proposed low cost for sale units, or to offer increased provision of social rented units. Either of those would have made the development financially unviable. So housing officers recommended to us back in April 2020 that Avant should consider whether there were other forms of affordable housing that could still be viable, including a commuted payment, and directed us to the council's policy. So Avant agreed at that time with the council's housing officers to instruct the district valuer to confirm what an appropriate value of commuted payment would be for this site, and a value of £18,000 per affordable home was confirmed back in August of last year, and Avant agreed with your officers to proceed on this basis. So just to be clear, the revised affordable housing proposal has therefore been confirmed as half social rented homes and half commuted payment, still on the basis of meeting the 25% provision overall, and the commuted payment will assist in the delivery of affordable housing on other sites in the local area. And I just want to highlight that in spite of the financial challenges, at no point has Avant Homes sought to reduce the percentage requirement below 25%. So that brings us to this application. Having agreed with housing officers on what would be an appropriate and deliverable form of affordable housing, Avant has sought guidance from the Council's Planning Service on the procedural implications, and the original legal agreement for the site was entered into by the previous landowners before Avant's ownership. And the wording in that original legal agreement is relatively simplistic and doesn't fully address all the options in the council's current policy. And specifically, it doesn't account for a circumstance where some or all of the affordable housing will be off-site or via commuted payment. So that's the context for the application that's before you today. And approval of this application is needed to enable the delivery of the affordable housing that's been discussed and agreed in principle with housing officers some 10 months ago. So just to summarise, the proposal is for 12 social rented homes and a commuted payment for the balance of 12 affordable homes, and that is in accord with the council's policy having regard to the exceptional financial challenges of the pandemic. The value of the commuted payment has been confirmed by the district valuer, and approval of this application will then enable Avant Homes to engage with housing officers to agree the fine detail of the affordable housing delivery in terms of its programme and timing, ensuring there's no delay. Delivery of the first on-site affordable homes is provisionally scheduled for next financial year. So on behalf of Avant Homes, we respectfully request that the committee approves this application and enables the delivery of this affordable housing to progress. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I understand the financial implications for Avanti and but I was wondering, a report was produced last week that showed that there had been significantly increase in the valuation of private properties down south, and well, obviously there's issues with regards to the actual valuation process down south from up here. Nevertheless, there seems to be an indication that there's an increased demand for housing, and the valuation has gone through the roof in some areas. So I was wondering what market testing you had done, you've completed with regards to this particular site, and also the general increase in the value of properties.
If I can take that one, Phil. As Phil's explained, sorry, is it okay to answer that?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, the value of the sales value of the properties hasn't changed since we did our appraisal. So our sales launch is based on the sales values at the time that the site was being negotiated through planning, just post our purchase. So our sales values are still based on that. As Phil has pointed out, the real challenge here was that being hit by the pandemic, unfortunately, as we all were, unforeseen, and we had to find a way to effectively rescue the site and allow the site to go forward and to retain jobs within our company, and not only that, but investment in Falkirk Council. We negotiated that, and that's done, but the revenues as part of that had already been squeezed as low as we could make them, because our processes that we in our Scottish region had to get the sign off of our investors. So we had moved in a number of areas to try and make the site viable to them, to allow them to forward the remaining cash that is required in order to develop the site. So the prices were part of that discussion at the time, and so they were as low as we could justify them and still take the site forward.
Anyone else have any questions? Mr. Price?
Thank you, convener. This can go to Mr. Riddle or Mr. McLean. There's probably a couple of questions here. Was there any other methods of doing this. I know and I understand the principles of the split on it was 12 socially rented and potentially 12 which would have been at a discounted price as the original. When that, as per your discussions you're having now, other than commuted sums, was there any other options discussed?
Well, initially it was a discounted sale.
That's what I confirmed, Mr. Riddle.
Yeah.
I did say that.
So yeah, that was the original option, but the values, as Phil has hopefully explained, didn't allow us to move that forward viably when it was all taken into the whole. As I've explained with regard to the delays on the project, the borrowings to buy the site and the interest on that, and the increased costs from our contractors and delays on contractors, sadly, through the pandemic, which is still ongoing. So that pushed us down this route to explore what other options were open to us and were covered by council policy. And that's in May last year is when the discussions started with your housing officers towards trying to help us keep this site going and keep this investment going. And we came to this position, and we managed to get that through our investors.
It's maybe worth adding that there was a look at were there any other of Avance house types that might qualify and be able to meet the low cost for sale and the relevant thresholds.
That is a point. I mean, it's part of the process. We did introduce some smaller terrace units as well. So in effect, they are not being offered at a discounted value, but it did introduce some quite a proportion of smaller units onto the site that we had to do as well in terms of this exercise.
So, sorry, but I maybe didn't make my question entirely clear. You did cover part of it, but I was thinking even that looking at, instead of having 12 socially rent, was the option of 24 socially rented looked at? And was that a possibility?
It was, councillor, but that in itself made the project, if I could use the word sick, even sicker, and it's a word we use in terms of finances. That put the whole viability even further backwards.
Okay, I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else got any questions? Councillor McCluskey?
You're on mute, John.
I'm sometimes better than mute, and I apologise. But you made a couple of statements in your submission there before I asked question. One, agreement was made by housing, but you do know that housing officers didn't make decisions. It's elected members that make decisions. So I hope just that you made that. Another one was to see if we would work with you on the discount prices. And I understand you have got planning permission for this site, but the elected members didn't support the original proposal. So that's I'm just saying if why you haven't added much to convince us of the change, why we should obviously work with you now. So that's to the points. But on the valuation, you're saying that it would be 10% dearer for you to build these houses than for the affordable houses than you could sell them for. So you'd be a loss. But could you explain to me the other 75% of the houses? Because I take it that you'd be selling them at a profit. And so you got a set profit that you would be selling the other houses just to try to compare. If there's, because to equate one and saying it's no viable for one, but you're only talking about the affordable houses. But normally what you would do is make that up on the other 75% element. So I was just trying to see if you had any information on it and that.
We had offered back during the negotiations to provide financial information, and that offer wasn't picked up. But yes, the affordable and the discount for sale and the housing for sale all becomes part of one calculation effectively for the viability of the site. They don't sit separately. They all contribute their parts, and the affordable and the discounted effectively pull down the value because there's less value and profit now for us. So that is countered by the profit that we have to make on the housing for mainstream sale. So to add more affordable would have meant that we would have had to increase the values on our other properties to a level that was not sustainable through our market research and the local market, and would have taken them out of the purchasing ability of the people that we had identified in the local market for purchasing these houses.
Aye, that's fine. I do accept the statement you made in your report about the cost of materials being a lot higher. At the present moment, you kind of get cement, you know what I mean? It's concrete to build and a lack of timber, you know. I'm hearing that from all my friends that work in the building trade, you know that. So I do know there's added cost because people are waiting on site and the cost of men being there, no material. So I understand that. But the reason I'm asking the last question, one is, convener, if I may, is in the 18,000 would be a plot for the affordable element. And as I said, you know, when we build a council house, I'm sure it works out over 200,000 that it's costing us to build a council house. So I know we've them to a superb standard, but you know, it does seem a big difference. So I was just trying to relate that as well in my questions. You know, it's a different type. Sometimes private houses have a lot smaller rooms than some of your council houses. So I would just say that. But no, that's fine, convener. I'm happy with the questions.
Okay, thanks for that, John. Anyone else? Any questions?
Yeah. Just that I want to ask the question if has any social housing groups been approached to take up these 24 units?
Yeah, we've had discussions with a couple of RSLs, and at the moment we're waiting. Clearly, as we were reminded earlier by Councillor McCluckie, that it's actually the committee that approve these applications. We're waiting for determination today before we take those forward in detail. But we're talking to a couple, but at the moment, possibly Sanctuary look like the option for us going forward on the site. We have had discussions at the early stage in planning with another RSL and housing over the social rent mix on site, which now includes a bungalow, amenity bungalows, etc. So we've taken those comments on board. But yes, quick answer is we are in early discussions with an RSL, and we will be engaging with them in more detail, hopefully following this committee today.
The discussions with RSLs over 12 units, not 24 units?
Over 12 units, that's correct. Yes, 12 units on site, and the 12 commuted sum would be money that could be used elsewhere within the council area.
If they're interested in 12, they could be interested in 24, or has that not been offered to them?
The 24s, I think, as we explained, 24 makes the site financially unviable. There was never a proposal for 24 on site. The approval was always for 12 on site and 12 discounted for sale. It's a discounted for sale element that has then been re-looked at with the council with regard to the cost, the values and the viability of the project.
Thank you.
If I could just...
Sorry, who's that?
Convener, it's Natalie Moore-Young from Housing. If I could just come in and answer that. Hi, thanks. Just perhaps to give some clarity around the discussions that Councillor McCluckie and Bowes has already asked around the social rented factor. The original discussions were for 24 socially rented properties, 12 social rent and 12 discounted sale.
and officers worked very hard to negotiate to enable us to keep the 24, but as the FANT representatives have identified already this morning, they advised that 24 was not financially viable for them. And Councillor McCluckie, as you rightly point out, councillors make the decisions around the policy and officers make sure that we are compliant with that, which is why we are at the position of looking at the 12, the reduction in the number of units on site to 12 rather than 24. If we were able to be considering 24, that would obviously be, our favoured position. But at this point in time, I'm aware there's been discussions initially with Kingdom as the developer on this site. Can you confirm, are you still in discussions with Kingdom?
We have, we've had discussion with Kingdom, and we have also spoken to Sanctuary Housing Association as well about the development. We haven't come to an agreement as to which of the housing associations we'll be using on the site yet. That will happen hopefully following determination of this application today.
Okay, thank you, Convener.
Okay, anyone else? Councillor, and sorry, yeah, we have Councillor nominate.
Convener, yep, thanks, Convener. Just a quick question. Can I just ask when the section 75 was actually signed? I couldn't see a date in the report relating to that, and I'm just wondering whether it was actually signed and agreed during the COVID lockdown period.
I can probably clarify that one. I think that was at the time of the permission in principle approval, which was issued in April 2019.
Right, so it's well prior to the lockdown of COVID.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it was the previous
Thanks for that.
applicant, the owner of the site, that did that, Councillor.
Hey, Councillor Murtagh.
Thanks, Convener. I suppose the main question is, and I think it's sort of been alluded to, but just to basically nail it down, is what the developer is saying is that if we can't agree this today, then the viability of the entire delivery of the housing becomes that you cannot proceed with the entire site, including the 12 affordable housing built. Is that what you're saying, that the financial decision is as such that if we don't agree yet, your entire site is not viable to proceed?
What I'm saying is that our main board gave us approval to proceed based on the application that's the amendment that's in front of you for the section 75A. Yes, that was the viability that they signed off. It was the delivery of 12 social rent on site and the commuted sum. Clearly, that I'm just laying down what the background is. I can't prejudice your decision and force you. That's just the situation.
I think the thing is,
it certainly, sorry, Councillor, talk over you. It would have at the time quite possibly have prevented us from moving forward on the site. Now, clearly, we've started on the site and we want to continue, and we want to deliver the affordable housing in line with the council's policies. That is where we want to get from this. If there is a different outcome to this, then clearly that is a discussion that will have to be taken back to my executive board, and we have got something to look at and try and sort out. Whether we can do that or not, that is not for, I guess, discussion today.
Well, and we've obviously had this opportunity to be able to question yourselves as to what the likelihoods are. I mean, the decisions that we are asked to make are, based on the consequences of, well, what will happen if we don't make those decisions. And I suppose that's that crystallisation that we all are very familiar with, as council, that we make balanced decisions or recommendations. So it is really important to know.
I think we've got a, I mean, I'll be quite honest.
Sorry,
I think we've got a big problem here.
Can you hang on? Sorry. Hang on. Councillor Murtagh, who was in the middle of a contribution. When you interrupted her, could you let her finish her contribution?
Thanks, convener. I mean, I think it's just, I would like to know, you know, whether, like you're saying, this is the basis on which you've been tasked to proceed by your board, and we do understand that. But I think it's also important for us to know, like other councillors have asked about, you know, whether potential other options. You know, you're saying you started on site, you want to continue with the site. I'm sure, you know, not without prejudging it, no councillors would want a site to be left in an unfinished state or anything like that, and that's a part of our consideration. So it's what other options would be possible in terms of reduction of the overall number on site, or, you know, the provision of, like you say, whether the 12 on a commuted payment, or, you know, delivery of the whole 24. I think, you know, if basically what you're saying is that the entire viability of the site would be compromised if we don't agree this specific request, it's important for us to understand that, or whether there are alternatives which could perhaps be considered that could still deliver a degree of affordable housing. And so that's what I'm asking you, is what the stages in decision making are, and what might be possible.
I think to answer that, what I would say is we went through the various potential stages and options over the last 10 months from the start of the May discussions with your officers, and each of those were looked at and were either discounted for the reasons discussed at the time and forwarded at the time, or ultimately then agreed, which is where we come to this position. So, I mean, I think it's worth saying that if our initial proposal was to deliver 12 for social rent on site and 12 discounted for sale, you know, we've never, our initial proposal was that. It's the finances of it that we found ourselves in with the circumstances of the pandemic, which we had to find a solution to. And we've gone through all those options for the different mechanisms of delivering affordable and what impact that would have on the viability and our ability to go forward with the project. And we've come to this option, which is allowed within your policies, and that is what, granted, we know it has to be approved by yourselves, but was negotiated and discussed with your officers.
Okay, I would leave other questions for officers in terms of the main debate, but thanks for that clarification from yourselves.
Councillor Kerr's waiting to get in, convener.
Councillor Kerr, do you want to just go ahead? The convener's just fixing his laptop.
Thanks, convener. So what we're actually saying is, what Avant are wanting is 12 affordable houses plus 12 payments, £18,000 for the other 12 that they're not going to build. Is that correct, or is it not correct?
That's correct.
Correct, right, okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. If, that's a proper question for Bernard, if the committee were to refuse this, have Avant got the premise on back to appeal it to the ministers?
Yes, councillor. They would have a right of appeal if the council decided to refuse the application.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Any further questions? Oh, okay. The what we'll do now is we'll introduce the planning and housing officers that were responsible for the discussions and negotiations from Falkirk Council's perspective. The report has been highlighted by John Milne.
Yes, thank you, convener.
Yeah, John.
Thank you. Good morning, members. This application is in relation to a housing development site located off Stirling Road in Larbert. The application seeks to modify a planning obligation agreed in an existing Section 75 agreement registered in the Land Register of Scotland on the 19th of April 2019. Clause 3.2 of that Section 75 agreement stated that the landowner must build at least 25% of the units as affordable housing, 25% being calculated to the nearest whole number rounded down. On the approved 93 unit development, this represents 24 housing units. The proposed modification of the Section 75 agreement seeks the following options with regard to the delivery of affordable homes. First of all, the construction of units for affordable homes on the site, or secondly, the construction of units for affordable housing on the site and the payment of a commuted sum. This current application seeks to provide a commuted payment in lieu of part of the on-site delivery of affordable homes. Based on the agreed sum of £18,000 per home, a commuted sum of £216,000 will be submitted to provide off-site delivery of 12 affordable homes, the remaining 12 units being delivered on-site. Clearly, a major stakeholder in concluding a recommendation on this application were colleagues in corporate and housing services. And to aid elected members in the rationale behind the recommendation, I have in attendance my colleague Natalie Moore-Young, who's the Strategy and Performance Manager within Corporate and Housing Services. Thank you, convener.
Yeah, thank you. Anything you want to add at this point, Natalie?
You're happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. What was the questions and on the floor, Councillor Bowes?
Thanks, convener. I'll start with a simpler one and to Natalie, and hopefully I see Mr. Liddell that's away. It's a shame because you get to hear the rest of it. Natalie, was the option of 24 socially rented properties investigated with them, and if that was to happen, what's the impact to the council?
Yeah, absolutely. Our negotiations are always aiming to get the most number of units on site. So as soon as we identified that the sale price was going to make it unaffordable for our particular group, the next phase of negotiations was looking at 24 social rented properties, which again would have been a really good outcome for us as an authority towards our additional target. Unfortunately, that's not something that Avant felt was financially viable for them. So therefore, the negotiations then led us to look at the alternative options, which really is the last resort being the commuted sums. And as we have already indicated this morning, and Councillor Murtagh has tried to nail down, is that we really were in a position whereby it was the 12 and the 12 split, or potentially nothing at all. And as I'm sure members will be aware through the committee reports in relation to the SHIP, we are in a time where housing is in critical demand and need, and the construction industry is both being delayed and costing more to build.
Again, and I say I do not want to become operational, and I'll really try not to be here. But looking at what you get as a commuted sum, and the total of it is 220,000 for want of a better number. I know it's just less of that. To be honest, I would have rather had 20 socially rented houses than having the 200,000, because those extra 8 actual houses we couldn't buy for 200,000. Now I don't know, and I see that the chaps for Avant and the agent are back. I don't know if there's ground there for a discussion on that, which may be acceptable to their board and also acceptable to us, and obviously the committee. This is only my personal opinion. I'm not telling the committee what we should do. I've had discussions with John Milne, I'm sure, and Natalie. I think you were involved in it as well, Natalie. We had quite an in-depth discussion on it. I do, and this is not really anything to do with Avant. I do have an overall concern about the way some adjustments are made to Section 75s. I think the lack of clarity on the DV reports to ourselves. I understand that's it's controlled by legislation, and it's not a case of it's John Milne's holding it back or the planning department's holding back, but it's something that we may have to approach with people, because I think as a planning committee, I think we should be able to see that. And I'll give you an example why. Sorry, this might, convener, sorry if you give me a wee bit of latitude, I'll get just to cover a couple of things. There's a site across the road from the Avant site at Bellsdyke Garage, and I had looked at that, and to be honest, I almost called that one in as well, because that one was actually a reduction on the price. Now there's supporting statements very helpfully from the applicant in that showed that the Section 75 amount there was somewhere near £27,000 per property. Now they put in a certain amount of information showing comparative sites at Bonnybridge and Airth. And I don't think you can do that, because I think, as somebody once said, it's location. In Larbert, for some reason or other, it has become a very popular area to live in, which obviously then increases property prices. That actual submission from their applicant complains about the lack of clarity from the information that they get from the DV. Again, here we're not really getting the information on what the DV is. I'm assuming that there has, because I think was it Mr. McLean said you've not asked for a reduction on anything, so I'm assuming you've went with the DV valuation on it. But again, as a planning committee, we don't get to see that, and I think it's something we should be able to see, because if we're going to make that decision, that needs to happen. I understand on this occasion that the committee sum is in lieu of the discount on the cheaper sale of house, but unfortunately, and I agree, 198,000 isn't exactly affordable housing. However, I do note that there's, between the sale price and what you suggested earlier, we're talking here about 22,000 per property is that figure. And yeah, again, if we'd seen the DV, I don't know if the DV if that's where they've come in. I would like to have seen that report, and I think probably the committee would have, so that we could actually do a bit more comparative. I don't know, and John, I know this is putting a bit no pressure, but maybe on yourself and maybe Bernard, is can we look at this? Can we speak to somebody at the DV's office, or if there's another way that we can get that information for our people? I would like, if it was possible, and again it's down to the rest of the committee, is if there could be a further exploration. I'm conscious of the time that you're looking to start it, and I know that this is the June planning meeting, and it wouldn't then come back as a minimum to August. But I wonder if there's a discussion that could still possibly be had with maybe an adjustment on the 24 number, which makes your project viable, but also makes it socially housing rent, because as I say, I would rather have the 10 socially rented houses than 200,000, because we couldn't build 10 socially rented houses for 200,000. I know that was been quite a bit, and I know it sounds really confusing, and I do apologise about that, but to be honest, it is. And I suppose a bit more clarity, I suppose the full disclosure on all sides would be useful as well to help us make this decision. Thank you, convener, and I do appreciate you giving me some extra time on that, and hopefully everybody got where I was going with it.
Yeah. Okay. So, I think we need some clarification and some advice from housing and from the legal people. Ian, you have.
Thank you, convener. I completely understand Councillor Bows's discussion there. It was just to make the point, and I'm just calling up onto my screen the Scottish Government guidance in relation to applications of this nature. And essentially, if there is an application for a modification of this sort, the legislation, and I'm quoting here, the legislation does not permit the planning authority to determine that the obligation should be subject to any modification other than the modification set out in the application. So I would maybe welcome my planning colleagues' thoughts on that, but it's just in terms of exploring other options. I would suspect that would actually require a further application for modification on the basis that essentially what we have here today is a binary decision of agree the modification that's before you or do not agree the modification before you. I don't know what your thoughts are, John and Bernard.
Ian, yes, just to come in on that point, I agree with the comments that you're making there in terms of the legislation. That's also my understanding that the option for members is to determine the application before them, or as you're suggesting, Councillor Bowes, you could continue consideration of the application, but you don't have the option of revising the application at this point.
You have your answer, Gary. Do you wish to come back?
Yeah, I get that. In that case, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to commit to one way or another, but I'm leaning towards refusing, hoping that people can talk over the summer and get something which is probably a better, and it may suit everybody better come August.
Okay, Councillor Clichy.
Thanks, convener. I'll prepare to move grant to the application. I was totally against this proposal to start with, 100% against it. However, Scottish ministers have decided to grant it. That's a major material consideration, and that planning stands. So at the end of the day, somebody would build on the site. So that is in effect. I would like to question not just district valuers, I'd like to question the Scottish ministers, but that is beyond our legal grant as well. So that I do understand, and I'm disappointed we couldn't get the Section 75 we were looking for, but Natalie, our officer there, has explained how hard the whole team has worked here. The deputation of the developer came in there and said facts that how the difficulty and how costly now cements went through the roof. For some reason, it's nearly doubled in price. If you can manage to get a bag of cement, people can't get it. But and to get a jigger full is it's just struggling plus wood. So what the developer said there is correct. And to continue it for something that's already started, we are looking at two important points. There is a need for housing at the moment, and there is a need for jobs. And presently people are working in that site. And if it meant that the site would have to maybe wait to see if it was viable and go forward and people to lose their job, I don't think we've got the material reasons to be able to refuse that, because I do see an attempt over a long period with the developer working with officers to try to resolve it. You know, I'm as I say, I certainly wasn't originally going to go and support that, but I have listened to the evidence. In every case, as I say, there's good points about district value, but as I say, every case has got to be on the merits and within our remit. And so sadly, and I'll say sadly, I will view move grant to with the officer's recommendations, because I think they've put a lot of work into this and tried the best. But we're in very difficult times, and you know, we've got to accept where we are. Thank you.
Convener, yep, just quickly, I'm happy to second Councillor McCluckie and support our officer's recommendations as well. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone otherwise minded?
Convener, I, with your permission, I don't know if my virtual hand doesn't come up against that glorious blue sky. Similar to Councillor Bowes, I mean, as I said when I was questioning the deputation, and I think what Councillor McCluckie was saying in terms of this site has granted planning permission, and nothing that we are deciding today will change that. You know, they can continue building on the site as is at the moment. The reason there's an application before us, and we've heard it's a binary choice, is because in the judgment of the developer, the investment portfolio, the investment decision is that they want to change you know, one part of, and it's the Section 75, but there's nothing that we're proposing here to alter the planning permission. To me, the difficulty, and as Ian Henderson's outlined in terms of that we cannot amend or make a different suggestion, you know, that's difficult, because I think what I would probably seek is to have a compromise where other options were considered. And I know that there are, you know, we've said, you know, and I know that officers have worked very hard, but I wasn't really picking up from the housing officer there, from Natalie, saying that she didn't think that there could be potentially other options explored. It's just that the developer has decided that that's not a desirable for their investment, which may well be, and we've all got sympathy with the situation we're currently in, both in the pandemic and for the construction industry overall. But you know, the long and the short of it is that if we accept this as a commuted payment, and I think it was Councillor McCluckie or another member that said, you know, we're not going to be able to build the properties for those commuted payments. Yes, we have a housing supply shortage, and we all want to see that rectified, and that's crucial, and especially for social rent and for you know, affordable housing. And we don't want, you know, my feeling is I don't want to put that in jeopardy, and the delivery of that in jeopardy. But at the same time, we will then, as you know, if we want to increase the amount of socially available housing, then or affordable housing as a authority, the onus will then be on us to deliver it, and we will have to take the financial hit on that, and those will come to our decisions. So it's a very difficult balancing act, and I do think that we need more information on that. I think there are questions to be answered from the district valuer's point of view, and how when these sums have been reached at, and I do believe that there could be a solution there that could assist with the viability of the development from Abant's point of view, but also be a more preferable solution to what's proposed in terms of the way the Section 75 amendments presented. So I am leaning towards basically move refusal on the basis that if we can't amend it, then I'm not happy to accept it. And that's the way I'm feeling about it just now. But again, it's with a heavy heart to do that, because I don't want to jeopardise the delivery of the site, and I don't want to do something to penalise the developer or you know, and put the site at risk. But I don't think the solution before us is particularly acceptable for what will then come back to ourselves. So that's, I will formally move refusal on those grounds.
Natalie, yes.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Convener, can I just second Councillor Murtagh?
Yeah, fine, thank you.
Thank you, Convener, and I apologise for my visual hand. I'm so used to Teams now, I'm not sure where the virtual hand is. I'd really like just to come in and make an observation. You know, it's really interesting hearing the debate today, because that's also reflective to the conversations that we have had within our service. You know, in trying to get the balance right, you know, we know we have a target of 491 homes to be delivering per annum. We know that the construction industry is a really challenging environment just now, and we know that the need for housing is increasing. So, you know, trying to balance that out whereby, you know, 12 is still 12, and within the current environment and within the current the environment when the discussions were taking place, there was a lot of information that was unknown, which I think is what I'm hearing the consensus here, that at the time when the discussions were taking place, in normal times, we would have been asking developers to submit a viability statement, which provides a more detailed outline and some more detailed information about why this is an exception. Now, we didn't have that at that time because, you know, there are a lot of the factors and a lot of the information was unknown. We are a good bit down the line now that potentially there is more information there that is available. So that was really the observation I wanted to make, and also just to concur with you know, members' comments today, in particular Councillor Bowes around the way that we approach Section 75s. That's something that we recognise within housing and planning that we want to get some clarity on in terms of our processes, if there is a request for that comes through. And you know, ultimately the team's very committed to delivering as many units as we possibly can. So I don't know if that helps or not, but it certainly, the discussions reflect the challenges that we have when we're trying to balance the need.
I can understand the aspect of it. Can you tell me if you have any knowledge of the discussions with the district valuer?
No, the district valuers came up with the figures, and I know we've made reference to the site across the road having a higher value than what has been quoted on the Avant site, but I'm not aware as to any more detail as to how the district valuer reaches the value.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Blackwood, and then I'll bring in Ian Hamilton from the legal side.
Just a quick question to Bernard Whittle. Did Avant not do a similar exercise at Mydom and Denny?
So yes, there was an application a number of years ago for the site at Denny, where Avant was the applicant and developer, and they did get an approval from the council to vary the terms of the Section 75 to ensure provision of a commuted sum payment.
Thank you.
Ian.
Thank you, Convener. Mr. Riddle, I know you've got your hand up. Unfortunately, our standing orders provide that the only opportunity for a party that's not part of the committee to speak is during the course of a deputation. Apologies for that. The reason I'd asked the convener if I could come in was just to clarify the provisions of the amendment with particularly Councillors Murtagh and Councillor Bowes. And can I please read out what I've scribbled down here and just make sure that that aligns with your thoughts? I've noted that the committee would refuse the application as it does not consider that satisfactory justification has been provided to outweigh the council's. And whether I'm reading a word into this or not, it's a wording in the policy, overwhelming preference to deliver the full affordable housing on site in accordance with supplementary guidance 06 affordable housing. And I've got the sense that what you're quite keen is to note that there could potentially be some further discussions over a revised approach to on-site provision, and that could perhaps be added as a note to that refusal reason. Does that sound what you were intending, councillors?
Well, certainly, and I would like it definitely noted that it's not a refusal outright. It's a case of, because there's no opportunity to amend that the preference for it to come back for further discussion and further exploration with a revised proposal that would be more acceptable, could be more acceptable to committee, basically.
Thanks, Councillor Murtagh. I think today it would be a straightforward refusal if that was the way that the committee decided to go. But I think it would certainly be possible to put a note in to reflect these thoughts that some further discussion may be beneficial. Councillor Bowes.
I agree.
Thank you, councillors.
Okay, anyone else want to contribute before I call for the vote? No. Okay, can we go to the divide?
Thank you, Convener. By way of a roll call, we have a motion by Councillor McCluckie, seconded by Councillor Nimmo, and that's to grant the application in accordance with officers' recommendations. We then have an amendment by Councillor Murtagh, seconded by Councillor Bowes, in the terms that I've just very shortly before read out. So on the basis of reading over councillor names, Convener Councillor Alexander.
For the amendment.
And Probius Buchanan has recused himself for this item. Apologies, just dropped my pen. Councillor Blackwood.
Amendment.
Councillor Bowes.
Amendment.
Councillor Goldie is absent. Councillor Hughes.
Amendment.
Councillor Kerr.
The motion.
Councillor McHugh.
For the amendment.
Councillor McCluckie.
Motion.
Thank you, Councillor McCluckie. Councillor Murtagh.
Amendment.
Councillor Nicholl is absent from the meeting. Councillor Nimmo.
For the motion.
And I have 3 votes for the motion, 6 votes for the amendment, and the amendment would duly be carried on that basis. Thank you. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thank you very much. The last. Oh, yeah. Where is he? I'm going to get him. 5 minutes under. Yeah, surely. People can be back by 12 o'clock.
Convener, bye.
Bye. Yeah, 12 o'clock.
If anyone missed that, we're just having a recess until 12 o'clock. They could be back at 12. Thanks.
Right, okay, I've just got to ask that. Right, thank you.
Provision to maximise using on site.
What I do have to laugh at, right, is the same possible, right, over around about now.
Thanks, Karen.
No problem, Provost. Councillor Kerr, Councillor Nimmo, can I just check your back?
I'm here.
Oh, there's be somebody checking your back.
I'm here as well.
Is that everyone? Alan, there's a legal issue that has cropped up. Ian, do you want to?
Thank you, and indeed, Councillor Nimmo had asked me to check during that brief break the minutes of the previous meetings, and Councillor Nimmo, you did indeed attend the April meeting when item 5 was considered. So that perhaps changes your position slightly in terms of your considerations narrated earlier on in the meeting.
Yeah, well, obviously there wasn't much of a debate had in relation to item 5 because it's been continued because of a complaint and an investigation that's ongoing. But yes, with that in mind, I really shouldn't have declared an interest in that item.
Right, well, I think that whenever it comes back up, I think we'll be aware of the fact that this is this was an error and that you can participate. In fact, we'll ask for that to be minuted.
Thank you, Convener, and thanks, Councillor Nimmo.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Convener. Just to ask Mr. Henderson, would that apply to me as well?
Yes.
I can recall that you were at the meeting also, Councillor Hughes.
Okay, can we go on to item 11, which is the last item? It's the erection of a manufacturing facility at the Earls Gate Park, Green Cross.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you. This application seeks planning permission for the erection of a Class 5 manufacturing facility with an ancillary Class 4 office. The applicant is a global company who manufacture biopharmaceutical products. The applicant has worked in Grangemouth since 2004 and they now wish to expand their operations. The application site is located at plots 5 and 6 of Earlsgate Business Park, and access would be taken off the existing road network. This application falls within the category of national development, and members will recall that a predetermination hearing for this application was held on the 26th of May. The Roads Development Unit, Transport Planning Unit, Environmental Protection Unit, Emergency Planning Unit, Nature Scot, Fife Council and SEPA do not object to this application. The Health and Safety Executive objects to the application on safety grounds. Grangemouth Community Council do not object in principle, but they have raised some comments in relation to piling activities and construction phase parking. Bernard, could you perhaps put some of the plans up and some of the photographs, please? To date, no public representation has been received on the application. The application is assessed as being in accordance with the development plan, and this includes policy JE06 on major hazards. The application site is identified in the proposals and opportunities schedule as a business opportunity, bus 12, Earlsgate Park. The application is assessed as being in accordance with Scottish planning policy, as the application relates to business and industrial development that increases economic activity. The development would make a positive contribution towards placemaking and would safeguard the natural and built environment. The application site is in the Grangemouth Investment Zone, which is identified in the National Planning Framework as a nationally significant site for industry and freight. The application is supported by the National planning framework because it relates to development of a strategically important national development opportunity for Scotland. Scottish ministers expect planning decisions to support the delivery of the national planning framework. No issues in principle are raised by the consultees, as discussed earlier and as detailed in the report, except for the Health and Safety Executive, who objected to the application on safety grounds. The application site is within multiple major hazard consultation zones, and this includes the Callachem Inner Zone, Syngenta Middle Zone and Fujifilm Outer Zone. A detailed assessment of the HSC objection is contained in the report. And what's been shown at the moment is a plan which shows the Callachem Inner Zone relative to the application site. So the red dotted line that you can see there delineates the inner zone. The application building is shown in, I think I would describe that as a turquoise colour, and then there's other buildings that the applicant currently operates from, which are shown in purple or pink, as you can see on the plan there. And this was something that was recommended to be provided at the predetermination hearing. The sensitivity of development within the inner zone triggered the advise against from the Health and Safety Executive. The type of accommodation likely to receive a do not advise against from the Health and Safety Executive would not suit the application's operational needs, and that was discussed in quite some detail at the predetermination hearing. In this instance, it's considered that the safety considerations outlined in the committee report, the net increase in people who would be exposed to risk, and the application being supported by the development plan, Scottish planning policy and the national planning framework outweigh the HSC objection in this specific location in this specific instance. It's recommended that members agree that they're minded to grant the application, and this would be subject to notification of the application to Scottish ministers. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you for that. I mean, this is a terrific way to finish a meeting. In planning terms, we've heard the issues that have been raised by HSE. Virtually every planning application that has gone ahead in Grangemouth has been objected to by the HSE. So I believe that this is a box ticking exercise. In relation to the wider issues, these are high quality jobs that will be attracting to Grangemouth, and that has to be welcomed. Has to be a mitigating factor against the arguments put forward by HSE. So I have no hesitation in moving the acceptance of this report, and therefore the referral to the Scottish ministers as part of the process. Mr. Kerr?
I should have maybe mentioned at the start, I mentioned at the predetermined meeting, Convener, I just want it noted that I work in the Syngenta compound, and I take cognizance of what Mr. Henderson says at the predetermined. I didn't think that would deter me from taking part. I just want it noted, Convener. Also, on the application, I think you're 100% correct. I thought it was a very productive predetermined meeting to have the applicant there. And listening that you didn't get many companies that will engage with the local community and ask their concerns, and they done that. So it was heartening that we kind of get more companies to do the same. As I already said, I pass that site every day, and at the units at the front, all the units has been built, every one of them's full. So as an investment zone, it creates more jobs for the area, and I'm quite happy to second your proposal, Convener.
Anyone else? Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, convener. The subject of piling was mentioned by Julie there. I think it was also brought up in the predetermination hearing. Now, I don't think you actually get quiet piling. I just don't think that happens. But I think the client in this case actually stated that they're using a quieter form. I don't think it can be quiet, but a quieter form of piling, which hopefully will give some reassurance to the comments from Grangemouth Community Council, and I'm also very happy that with the assurances on the health and safety side as well, and I totally agree with the former two speakers.
Yeah. Anyone else? No. Okay, can I thank the members in terms of this particular application that will go as per the report to two Scottish ministers. Can I thank members for their participation and their contributions this morning? They were very constructive, and that's something we want to continue to see. So thanks very much, folks.
Thanks to the chair.
Thanks, convener. Have
Thank
a
you.
good day, everyone.
Thank you. Bernard, could you maybe give me a wee tinkle? Thank you very much.